And oftentimes people reach outside for relationships to make them happy, to make them feel worthy, make them feel supported. And so, but what are they doing? We're unconsciously, the way we've been programmed in two ways. One, through romantic comedies, romance novels, to put a relationship where the presence of God should be, or let's say the source should be. So we end up placing a burden on relationships to do what can only be done by the source of all creation in our connection with it. Peace and riches blessings. I am Michael B. Beckwith, the host of Take Back Your Mind. Peace and riches blessings to all of you, and welcome to Take Back Your Mind. If this is your first time with us, please be aware that when we talk about Take Back Your Mind, we're talking about the fact that there's so much in the world that's seeking to program your mind, from commercialization and late night news and things of that particular nature, that oftentimes the mind is bombarded with agendas that are not your own. We're inviting you to take back your mind, so that if there's any program that's going to be done, it's going to be done by you, so that you're bringing into your awareness and into your mind that which is uplifting, that which is inspiring, that which is healing, that which is about you embracing the genius that is within you, so that you can unfold and reflect and reveal your greater yet to be. Welcome to Take Back Your Mind. I am your host, Michael B. Beckwith, the founder of the Agape International Spiritual Center, the author of Life Visioning, the author of Spiritual Liberation, and a few other books. So today, the life question of the week is from Tina from Tennessee. T from T. Tina from Tennessee. She says this: almost a year ago, I discovered through DNA testing that my father is not my biological father, and that I have two half-sisters. I've since met and gotten close to my biological sisters, which has been wonderful. However, I also had a major falling out with my mother because she lied to me my entire life about this. Plus, she tried to shame me for getting to know my sisters. I haven't spoken to my parents in several months. This has been incredibly painful and difficult, but I am not ready to contact them yet. I feel like I'm mourning the death of the life I knew for 40 years, which now feels like a lie, as well as half of a cultural identity I associated with, which is not my identity at all. How can I process and release myself from all the hurt and anger? You ended this question, Tina, with how can I process and release? So you're on the right path already. It's interesting to note that this particular experience that you have had is not uncommon these days. With DNA testing, which didn't exist a number of years ago, there's been so many cases of people discovering sisters and brothers, aunts and uncles, cousins, and even, as in your case, real dads and things of that particular nature that before would have been unnoticed. So this is becoming a kind of common occurrence that's shifting family dynamics in a big way. So here you have a situation where you feel that your mother has lied to you for 40 years. Now, obviously, this whole thing is going to come down to forgiveness in a moment, but to get there, we have to go through a couple of analysis. One, your mother, I don't know what's going on in her mind, but she's trying to shame you, but she probably has a little shame herself, probably some embarrassment. The fact that she raised you with the awareness that the man in the house that was raising you was not your biological father, there's probably some embarrassment or shame there. So her projecting shame on you because you reached out and discovered your sisters is probably a projection of some unhealed perception within herself. So you're going to have to go in within yourself and kind of forgive that person who 40 years ago was just doing the best she could to raise a family. You don't know, and I don't know the circumstances behind that pregnancy and why she would say that the man in your house, who raised you as a dad, obviously, was not your biological dad. And that brings up this point. Those 40 years was not a lie. Those 40 years was your upbringing. This man in your house raised you as his own. And that wasn't a lie. That was the experience you had with your dad. Not your biological father, but your dad. So let's eliminate the pain that is being projected as you saying it's a lie. It wasn't a lie. It was your experience. And so now you are aware that you have sisters. You say it's wonderful. We want to celebrate that. You're becoming aware that you only knew half your culture, as you called it. You thought you were, I guess, 100% of some culture, but you realized that there was another part of your culture that, or your ethnicity, that you didn't even know was yours. And so you get to explore the other parts of yourself that you didn't even know existed. So all of this is going to come down to you at some point forgiving your parents. Yes, they lied, or let me put it like this, it was a lie of omission. They did not tell you the truth about your birth and your father, your biological father. It's a shock. It's a shock to the system. So at some point, you're going to have to get down within yourself. You're going to have to, as our Native American brothers and sisters would say, walk a mile in another person's moccasins. That is, you're going to have to walk a mile in your mother's shoes. Why did she feel she couldn't make this public? Did she feel embarrassed? Did she feel shameful? 40 years ago. And then maybe your heart can open a little bit. You just forgive her. It's not going to change anything. Those 40 years that you were raised by these two people, it's not going to change anything. The values that you received from them, the experience that you received from them, the teachings, the safety, the protection, all of that was still there. It wasn't a lie. You just thought he was your biological dad, and he wasn't. So you're going to have to go into some level of forgiveness so there can be some kind of reconciliation. You say you're not ready now. That's okay. When you do your forgiveness around your mother and the man that raised you, I don't even know if he knew. Again, I don't know the background to this. You'll be able to meet your mom and have a really great depth of conversation. You can listen to her. What was she growing through? Why did she make these choices? Why did she decide not to tell you who your dad was? You'll listen. You may agree, you may not agree. But to live in a state of resentment, animosity, unforgiveness is not creating for you the kind of life you want to live. You cannot be fully fulfilled with resentment in your consciousness. That is like walking around with a big pebble in your shoe. You'll never be quite comfortable. You'll adjust to the pebble in the shoe. You'll try to limp along. But until you take that pebble out of the shoe, you won't be comfortable. So until there's some forgiveness via, this is yourself, not your mom, going inside of you and releasing resentment, until there's some deep forgiveness, you're going to be uncomfortable. Now, when you do have this conversation, you can't live with any expectation of what your mother may or may not say. Again, that's her life. She may not totally open up to you right now. She still may be embarrassed. But you must release the animosity, for you to be happy. As I have taught for years, all forgiveness is self-forgiveness. You are releasing the toxicity out of your own being. And now what do you get to do? You get to know your sisters. You get to know other aspects of your family that you didn't even know exist. It's an exploration. It's a whole new life. It's an adventure. You can, simmer in resentment, or you can celebrate a new door that is opened and forgive. When I read your note, that's what comes to me right now. I had a major falling out with my mother because she lied to me my entire life. Listen, every single day she didn't tell you a lie. She omitted how you came into this world. So she probably was living thinking you would never, ever find out. But as so many people are discovering these days, that old DNA testing is changing a lot of lives. Celebrate the good. You have sisters. You have other family. You have a part of your ethnicity you didn't know existed. Now you go circle back, go within yourself and forgive, and be open to a deeper conversation without blame or shame. Tina from Tennessee, I hope this was helpful. And based on the many, many people who are doing DNA testing, maybe this provides context for others as well. I had a friend recently, a couple of years ago, who found out she had a brother. And she didn't know her dad had a relationship with another woman. And she has an older brother she never knew. And for her, it became like, I've got a brother. It opened up possibilities of more family as well. So I'm saying this is becoming more than a common occurrence at this particular time in human evolution. Tina, do your forgiveness work. Everyone else, if you have a question, just email me at podcast@michaelbeckwith.com. Your name, where you are from, and a question that you may want to ask me. Have a beautiful day. I'll be right back. So welcome back to Take Back Your Mind. This is a solo cast. I'm just going to speak to a degree about something that's very important to so many people, and that is the context of relationships. Oftentimes when people write in, they want to know about primarily one of three things. They want to know about relationships, their soulmate, how to get along with other people, or they want to know about success and finances and prosperity, their destiny, their dharma, or they want me to talk about their health, mental, emotional, or physical health. So in this particular day, we're going to talk a little bit about relationships. Now, the context, we have to understand there's always a context of relationship. The context of relationship is that we are here to grow, develop, and unfold to our greater yet to be. We live in a large question. That question is, what is the universe up to? You can say, what is God up to as me? And the universe is up to producing an individual that can perfectly reflect and reveal the cosmos in a way that has never happened before. That's cosmos, K-O-S-M-O-S, and cosmos, C-O-S-M-O-S. Cosmos with a K means the invisible, undifferentiated wholeness. It's invisible. It means potential that hasn't been expressed yet. And the cosmos, which is C-O-S-M-O-S, which is the multidimensional universes, planets, living biology, all that you can see. So we're actually here to reflect and to reveal the cosmos, and the cosmos that has never happened before. That's the context of relationships. Without that context, we fall prey to putting relationships where God should be, or the source. Oftentimes, people want to put their relationship where the source is. The source is the only thing that can bring you permanent happiness. the source of all creation, your real nature and being. You have innate joy, innate peace, innate abundance, innate, we can use the word prosperity, creativity. That's all within you. And oftentimes people reach outside for relationships to make them happy, to make them feel worthy, make them feel supported. And so, but what are they doing? We're unconsciously, the way we've been programmed in two ways. One, through romantic comedies, romance novels, to put a relationship where the presence of God should be, or let's say the source should be. So we end up placing a burden on relationships to do what can only be done by the source of all creation in our connection with it. Over the years, people live primarily from, okay, I want to get married, I want to have children, I want to, get a home, I want to be happy in this home with my children, and hopefully they'll go out and be married and give me grandchildren. I get a picket fence. I want my genes to be passed on so that I have grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I have a legacy of biology, you see. And the species kind of live that way in order to further the species called spiritual beings having a human incarnation. Now there's almost 8 billion people on the planet. So the necessity for people to come together to share genes is not necessary anymore. It's cool, it's wonderful for people to have children and grandchildren and all that. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's not a necessity as it was many, many, many years ago when this experiment called spiritual beings having a human incarnation was first unfolding. My friend Barbara Marx Hubbard used to say, we used to get together genes matching genes, but now we're living in an age where genius is matching genius. So people come together to match genius, not necessarily to further their genes. And so when you combine those two things, context is the universe is up to producing an individual that can perfectly reflect that sense of perfection that is within us in a way that has never happened before, and that we are to put together genius with genius, not necessarily genes to genes, even though that's okay, but it's just not a necessity on the planet right now. That takes the burden of relationships off of making us happy. I'm just going to bring this up now. A little pamphlet, little book. It's called The 8 Principles of Thriving Relationships. You can get it for free. It's Valentine's Day. And you can get it free. You just go to michaelbeckwith.com/relationships, and we'll email it to you at no cost. It's just my gift to you, Agape's gift to you, or you can find the link in the show notes. So that's the 8 principles of thriving relationships, and it begins with that particular dynamic of the context for relationships. So now we're in a relationship, and there's a dynamic that I call the cheerleader and the critic. When you're in an intimate relationship, even a friendship, we learn what support is. We learn the consciousness of supporting each other, consciousness of patience, the consciousness of compassion, the consciousness of listening rather than interrupting and speaking when another person is sharing. We learn how to cheerlead our mate or our friend. They're trying something new. They're starting a business. They're running a business. They have a dream. They have a goal. Maybe it's fitness. Maybe it's a business. Maybe it's to go back to school. Whatever that is, the friend or the intimate other is kind of a cheerleader. You can do this. They're holding him in prayer. They're there to support. You see? And that goes both ways. But there's another part of the relationship that's called a critic. Now here, we call it loving candor, where we're able to share with our mate where the slip is showing or the zipper is down. your slipper's showing, you may want to look at this in your life, or your zipper's down, you may want to look at this in your life. But I call it loving candor because it's not with rivalry. It's not with making a person wrong. It's not with, I'm here to just constantly fix this person. You know what I mean? I can remember this old joke where this couple was about to be married, and the woman was very, very nervous, because the place was packed full of friends and family, and she had to walk down the aisle with her dad, and she had to walk by all these people, and she was so nervous, and she was telling the minister who was officiating the ceremony, I'm too nervous, my legs are shaking, I don't know. The minister says to her, listen, when you walk out of the room, obviously there's an aisle that you're going to walk down. All you say to yourself is, I'm walking down the aisle. And then when you get halfway there, to your right is the changing room. You know you're halfway there, and you look to the right and say, okay, changing room. You're almost at the front. You'll see this big hymnal. And you'll say, okay, hymnal. So she's walking, and she's nervous, and to the chagrin of the groom's family, they hear her say, I'll change him. I'll change him. Oftentimes people get in relationships and they want to change the other person, or their conversation from the critic is constantly trying to make the person better. It may be out of love, it may be out your slipper's showing, your zipper's down, whatever the case may be, but there's an energy of, I'm going to change them. You see, that's the critic. Here's a rule of thumb. If we have not done enough inner work on ourselves, where we have loving compassion, deep and profound self-love and appreciation, patience with ourselves, not beating ourselves up, we can't give that to anyone else. So we end up in a relationship where we're going to take our lack of self-love, our lack of self-compassion, our lack of patience, and we project it onto the mate. You should do this. Why aren't you doing this? You should do it this way. Let me help you. And the energy of that is more of a heavy critic rather than loving candor. So going back to the first rule, the context is that we are here to unfold to our greater yet to be. And that our happiness comes from the source. And then self-love and appreciation is one of the first steps in spiritual growth, development, and unfoldment. For without it, we project onto the world stumbling blocks, hindrances, and obstacles that are within us. And when we get in relationship, our critic becomes stronger than our supportive aspect of ourselves. We have to have both in an honest relationship. You have to be able to have loving candor to say, hey, you can grow in this area. But unless there's self-love and appreciation, the critic will outweigh the supportive aspect of us. There'll be an imbalance, and the relationship is probably doomed for longevity, because no one wants to live with somebody that's always criticizing them. You've seen the jokes of Dagwood constantly being henpecked. You've seen henpecked men, and you see women who've been overly criticized by men. Generally, the critic is an individual that lacks a great degree of self-love and appreciation and has no patience with himself or herself. So they bring it to a relationship. So loving candor in a relationship can only come about when there's loving compassion for ourselves. Just check yourself out. Are you patient with yourself? Do you beat yourself up? Do you make yourself wrong when you make mistakes? Do you say to yourself, God, I always make bad choices. I always get myself in terrible situations. Do you forgive yourself easily, or do you hold grudges against yourself? If you do, you're going to be a hell in a relationship, because you're going to take that same angst and you're going to place it upon that other individual. So we're talking about intimate relationships. In a loving relationship, the cheerleader outweighs the critic. But you have to have the critic, or it's just phony. But the cheerleader outweighs the critic, and it becomes a dynamic momentum from growth. And when you talk to each other, you actually know that the other person is on your side. You don't have to guess. They support you. You don't have to guess. They're for you because they love you the way you are and are holding the space for your unfoldment the same way that you're holding the space for your own unfoldment. Think about it this way. If you were to be exactly the way you are right this moment for all eternity, could you be happy? Probably not. There are areas in your own life where you want to grow. You want to evolve. There's more skills you want to have. There's more knowledge you want to have. So you love yourself the way you are, but you're holding a space for your constant evolution and unfoldment. Your mate, friend, associate, intimate other, if there's self-love there, they love you exactly the way you are. But at the same time, are holding a space for where you want to grow, develop, and unfold, and you're doing the same for them. So the relationship is dynamic. Unless there's spiritual growth and unfoldment, then what evolves or what happens in a relationship is what is generally called the friction of fictions. What does that mean? Unless we know ourselves, we're like a fictional character of unhealed trauma that creates personalities and subpersonalities, which are masks hiding the trauma and the unhealed drama. It's a fictional character. It's not the real you. The real you is a multi-dimensional soul that's incorruptible, timeless and ageless. It's beyond death, and it is, some people call it the higher self, the real self, the authentic self, the timeless self. Call it what you will. It's the real you. And it, through your spiritual practice, is seeking to express itself as you in this earth plane. The earth plane is very dense. It's a world of illusion and delusion and misprogramming and misinformation that's created a world of scarcity and lack and war and innovation and charity and philanthropy and creativity. All of it is, every stage of consciousness is in this world on this planet. But there's a part of you that is a perfect idea of the cosmos that wants to express. That's your real self. And when you pray, when you meditate, you're opening yourself up to be receptive to who you really are, to come into the earth plane, shift your personality so that your personality becomes a reflection of the dignity and the oneness and the beauty of your real self. Until that happens, this is fiction. It's a fictional character, you see. So when people are not aligned with their real self and they're just hiding dramas, unhealed, that's called the friction of fictions. Egos and fictional characters will never get along. It's impossible. Egos never get along. You can do behavior modification temporarily. You can have rules and time out. Things of that particular nature. But always, the fictional characters are always vying to be right in a relationship. Years ago, this kind of spiritual work, shadow work, inner child work, meditation, affirmative prayer, establishing an intention to become the best version of ourselves, that wasn't necessarily in the culture. It was about spreading our genes, finding a romantic relationship, making sure we had enough money to survive. The last 40 years, now what's come into the culture is, I really want to grow, develop, and unfold to be my greater yet to be. So now the friction of fictions is more easy to see when people don't love or are not connected with their real self and their real nature, you see. So when two fictional characters come together and then they add sex, that becomes a cauldron of all kinds of stuff rising up, and blame and shame and all kinds of arguments and stuff, because the unhealed fictional characters have added sex to the dynamic, and then that energy boils up all the places that need to be healed, you see. People then break up. Sometimes it's short-lived. And then if they're unconscious, they immediately want to get into another relationship and never examining what happened. Why did that trigger me? Why did I suddenly want to argue? Because there's no introspection. There was no healing of the woundedness. There was just a replay of perhaps the family dynamic that became surged because the sexual energy was there. As Carl Jung indicated, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will, and I'm paraphrasing, it will be the law of our life. It will reveal itself as fate. When it's not really fate, it's actually unconscious. The unconscious stuff that we haven't dealt with just showing up in our life. We say, well, that's our fate. No, that's just unconscious becoming the law of our life. So with spiritual work, I call it work play because ultimately you end up doing your inner work with a sense of lightheartedness, a sense of love. You begin to uncover those areas of hurt and shame and blame and unforgiveness. And you enter into friendships and relationships, not putting the burden on the friendship to make you happy. As I said in the beginning, because if you do that, you become a kind of an emotional stalker. You'll reach out to that person to make you happy. And if they're not there, if they're not acting the way you want them to act, you'll act out in a certain way. You become addicted to them being a certain way for you to be happy. That's called a prison, you see. So all of this is about growing and unfolding. This is all in this little book that I wrote. It's a little pamphlet, Now, within friendships and relationships, there's something I call marriage and divorce and remarriage. Meaning this happens in friendships and it happens in people who are actually gotten legally married. When I facilitate weddings, I will often say, as beautiful as you guys are looking right now, he may be in a tuxedo, she may be in a beautiful dress, hair's perfect, his hair's perfect, nails are done, Don't fall prey to saying to each other, please, 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 don't change. No. You're basically saying, and this is in all relationships, a friendship even. You're not saying don't change. You're saying, I'm going to be with you as we change. I'm going to hold and support you as we grow together, because the beings that are standing there at the altar are not going to be the same people standing there 5 years from now. Changes are going to happen. They're going to go deep within their own soul. Certain experiences are going to come up to make them grow. So a successful marriage is a marriage in which there is a conscious divorce from who one used to be, and then a remarriage as to who we are today. 18-year-old, 22-year-old, 25-year-old, 29-year-old, 30-year-old, 35-year-old people who got married, later on, life has seasoned them. They've learned more about themselves. They've learned more about something within them, and so they have an opportunity to renew their vows, but to renew their vows with the new people. It's a renewal with new people. Oftentimes, something becomes uneven because an individual may be consciously working upon themselves. They may be meditating. They may be going to a spiritual community. They may be doing some kind of spiritual practice, and they're not the same person they were 5 years ago. And the other person may be just going to work, coming home, not really engaging in their potential, and it becomes kind of lopsided, kind of uneven energetically. And so sometimes that brings about a change. And it may encourage the other person to, I need to do some introspection. I need to stop relying upon them to make me happy and discover it, or maybe not. So there might be a divorce, or there might be a remarriage at a higher frequency. They kind of, an individual may grow and they may get married, but the new people getting married. There's a Native American custom, I forgot what particular nation or tribe, but they get remarried every 7 years. Like they're married, after 7 years they come together, sometimes with the community, sometimes by themselves, and look at how they have grown over the last 7 years. And they'll kind of say, we've grown here, we've grown here, we've grown here. You want to do another 7? You know, and then they'll recommit for another 7 based on who they are now, not based on who they were when they were 18 or 20 or 22 or 25, you see. So it's built into the structure. Oftentimes in the Western world, there's nothing built into the structure for growth. Just like, till death do your part. Which is, you know, I think it's in California, it's like 60 to 75% of marriages end, you know? Or maybe, I know it's over 50, and then the second marriage is 70, I think it's around 75% don't work. So it's not built into the structure that changes are going to occur. And so people become devastated at divorce, or they think they failed, or it's a shame, you know, that someone's separating. People separate, you know, but I think as more and more people become conscious that their own happiness and their own joy is up to them, then what happens? You radiate into your life someone that matches that frequency for growth, development, and unfoldment. It's a part of the added things. When you hear the scriptural reference, seek first the kingdom or the queendom of God, and everything else is added. This includes relationships. Seek first your inner joy, your inner happiness, your inner support, your inner love, your inner awareness of taking care of yourself, self-sufficiency, and then everything else is added. You're not looking for Mrs. or Mr. Right to fill in a hole within yourself, because the hole is imaginary. You are whole. That multidimensional soul faculty that you are is perfect. And you're downloading it through prayer and through meditation. And with every insight, your vibration changes. You'll notice over the years, your friends will change based on who you are today. Younger, you may have done some antics, may have done some things based on your immaturity that you wouldn't do today. You see? So relationships are dynamic. And then you find, as you're more and more intimate with you, more and more loving with the real self, more and more courageous with breaking inner boundaries, more and more honest with yourself, relationships mirror that. So relationship then becomes a ship of transformation. As a mirror and as a ship of transformation. And all the good stuff that we've been programmed about, the romance and the support and the loving and all that, it's all there. But it's a part of the added sweetness of us falling in love with life and falling in love with the life within us. Because if you're not in love with life, you're not in love with the life within you, you're going to try to depend upon that love to come from someone else. And you're going to be disappointed. Why? Because if you diss your appointment with the real you diss your appointment with the God presence, you diss your appointment with the source, you'll be disappointed, you see. And you'll blame someone else for not making you happy. And this is why oftentimes people will pray or visualize or holographically feel something that they want to bring into manifestation to make them happy. And they do it for a while. They'll be the right vacation spot with supposedly the right person, and then find something to complain about. Someone to blame. The waiter was not fast enough or something, you know what I mean? They'll still take themselves and their unresolved issues into the most perfect setting with the so-called perfect person. They'll find something to be upset about because that upsetness is an unresolved issue within themselves. So when we deal with relationships, they are a mirror to what's happening within here, you see. Resolved or unresolved, you see. I remember a friend of mine, his parents were married for about 60-something years. And on one of the anniversaries, I think it was 60th anniversary, they asked his father, you know, God, you've been married for 60 years. How did you guys do that and remain happy, you know? He said, well, when I got married, I said to my wife, you know, for us to be happy, I'm going to make all the important decisions and you'll do all the rest. And they said, well, how's that working out? He said, nothing important ever came up. That was a friend of mine named Kit. His father said, nothing important ever came out. Came up. He just took life more easy. He didn't have to dominate, manipulate, or control. You know, it was just, you know, hey babe, what you want to do? Where you want to go? You know, and that's a tongue-in-cheek kind of vibe of a man that was didn't take himself too seriously. You see, he had a lot of wholeness already active. Obviously, one of the things that comes up is our family of origin. You know, there are dynamics that play out that until we become aware of them, they play out in our present day relationships. You know, but they're largely unconscious. So what happens is, I've noticed this a lot with people, they don't know this because the dynamics of their birth, their family of origin is largely unconscious, but they'll recreate it at work. They'll recreate it with their friendships, and it becomes like the same dynamic they had with their parents, their siblings, their etc. So in your spiritual upbringing, your spiritual practice, you begin to notice your dynamic that you had, the birth order, you know, becomes very important. You know, the middle child syndrome, the third child syndrome, the younger sister, the younger brother, and they still play that out. Now, this is what happens when you meditate. There comes a moment where you realize that the presence of God doesn't have firstborns, doesn't have stepsisters, stepbrothers, stepmothers, stepfathers, thirdborn, 10th born. Those are all psychological dynamics that play out. But when you realize that you are a singular manifestation of a cosmic unfolding, and this is just not intellectual knowledge that I'm giving you. You have to actually go in and meditate until you realize you are not a little brother. You're not an older son. You are you. And then the dynamic, the psychological dynamic that's been written about in many psychological books, you know, of how that plays out in your life, begins to dissolve. It's called a healing. It's called a revelation. And so I can remember teaching a class, and there were triplets, these three men. Two of them were in the class at the same time. And whenever they shared, they would always say, we. I mean, one would have an insight about the teachings. We'd be talking about the reading of the week. And he would raise his hand and says, well, you know, we kind of understand what the law of manifestation means, but we want a deeper understanding of blah, blah, blah. So one day I said, what do you mean we? Do you mean you, I? Because you're not a we. Yes, you were triplets. You wore the same clothes until you were 10 years old. Your parents thought that was cute, and you considered yourself a part of a triumphant. That's sweet and that's wonderful. You love your brothers, but you're now a man. And do you understand that as much as you love your brothers, you are a unique expression of infinite potential? And you can tell it hit him like the old proverbial statement, like a ton of bricks. Like, wow, I've been saying we all my life. And he began to unravel the fact that it was a we, and that all brothers, even though there's some great similarities, same DNA, grew up in the same environment, so they do think alike in many ways, but they were also radically different. So if he can have that understanding as a triplet, you can have that understanding as a person who was a middle child, or you came in, you were born third or fifth or 10th, or you came in first. You are a singular manifestation of a cosmic unfolding. You have a direct at-one-ment with God, or the way you can look at it, a direct at-one-ment with your soul, which is an emanation of God. This is very important. I say that because even the great metaphysicians will come to an understanding that the presence of God is everywhere in its fullness. It's universal, and we are here to individualize the universal, just as the universal has individualized itself as us. They're very aware that God is everywhere, but still, there's this little tiny thought that God is out there somewhere and not here. It keeps away the power of unity, you see. If I break it down for you like this, just imagine there is a you that is a unique direct emanation of the God source, incorruptible, ageless, timeless, multidimensional. That's you. And that you're here to allow that part of you to manifest right here and right now. It's not a middle child. It's not a third born. It's not a stepchild. It's not adopted. It is you. When you pray, your prayer is going to have more power. You're not praying from the personality construct, the mask, firstborn. That's fictional. Stepchild, fictional. Adopted, fictional. Those are fictional characters that have psychological constructs, but they're not real. Real meaning they're not eternal. They're just temporary masks that we wear, but those particular masks produce experience based on thought forms of that particular personality. Oh, I hope you're getting this. And why the necessity of meditation and inner work. So, even though we're dropping this on Valentine's Day, and you were perhaps looking for like a more romantic kind of vibe, you can't have that eternally if you're living in eternal hell. And eternal hell is being separate or living in the delusion of separation from your real self. You see? So now, here you are, taking full responsibility for your life. You have a prayer life. You have a meditation life. A life of study. A life of associating with open-minded, loving beings. You're growing without pictures in your life. What shows up in your life are individuals, friends, not just acquaintanceships, friends. You may not have a lot of them. You don't need a lot of friends. You may have a few that you can count on. And perhaps a soulmate. Now, there are different levels of soulmate. There's seasons, reasons, and lifetimes that people come into our life. Sometimes we're in a particular season of growth, and people will come into our life during that particular season to reflect things back to us, to teach us, to support us. And when that particular season is over, you find that they're not at the central part of your life anymore. they're kind of at the peripheral part of your life. And then there are some people that come into your life, there's particular reasons. You're going through a healing crisis, or you're going through a major insight. And a person may come into your life and they may reflect an answer to you that's absolutely what you need at that time in your life for that particular reason. And then there are individuals that come into your life. It's a lifetime connection. And when you're doing your inner work, you start to notice the people that are there for a lifetime. Now, in all of those particular dimensions, seasons, reasons, or lifetime, there are soulmates in all of those domains. There's a soulmate for a season. There's a soulmate for a particular reason. There's a soulmate for a lifetime. It's a lifetime connection that you're destined to meet when your vibration matches. You see, they're looking for you and you're looking for them. They're working on them and you're working on you. And then you meet, it's like, whoa. You're finishing each other's sentences. You have a somewhat the same viewpoint on life. Or even if you don't, there seems to be a lot that's simpatico. The cheerleader is outweighing the critic. They're not trying to get their happiness from you. They're bringing happiness. You're bringing joy. They're bringing support. You're bringing support. There's a vibrational match. In your intimate relationship grows not from the fiction of frictions or the friction of fictions. It's growing from two whole people, or two people who are heaven bent on being whole, working together. That's heaven. Imagine for a moment you're in tune with your innate wholeness. Imagine for a moment you're not trying to get somebody to make you happy. You remember that old song that programmed a lot of minds? People who need people are the happiest people in the world. Ha! Sometimes people who need people are stalkers. People who need people are Klingons. They're going to cling to people. No, people who realize that all that they need is their connection with God. Bring in people who know that all that they need is their connection with God. And then they meet. And they may have talents that are different from each other. They're unique, so they're not the same people. They support each other with loving candor. The critic is with loving candor. There's patience, compassion, honesty, and total acceptance as to right where you are at this moment. So imagine for a moment, you accept yourself right now. Yes, you're growing, you're unfolding, but you love yourself in spite of the mistakes you may have made in life. You love yourself, regardless of the areas of your life that are embryonic and not fully fledged, not fully birthed yet. You love yourself, you're okay. You will draw into your life an individual that loves you the way you are and supports you in becoming your greater yet to be. And then you'll be with an individual, you love them the way they are, but you support them in becoming their greater yet to be. That's heaven. That's heaven. That's conscious relationship, not the friction of fictions. Now, in the book, The 8 Principles of Thriving Relationships, I didn't go through all the principles today. This is just 40-something minutes of just teaching around them. But you can get this for free. This is my gift to you. michaelbeckwith.com/relationships. You'll get the 8 Principles of Thriving Relationships. And it's in the show notes, the link in the show notes. Because relationships can be so juicy and fun and delicious and pleasurable and loving. Particularly if you're not a Klingon, a stalker, or thinking that someone else is going to make you happy or take care of your needs. No. I'm going to stop right now, but I just need to say one thing. Metaphysically, the word need means potential. So when you have a need, that means that there's a potential waiting to be activated. Not from out there, but from within here. So when people come together and they know that, they support each other in growing and developing and unfolding. And they have patience and compassion and loving candor to assist. And you'll find your friends, your associates, will be more cheerleading than critics, but they'll still have the honesty to have loving candor. I hope this has been helpful. This has been all about relationships. And what's the number one relationship? You with you and the source of all creation. Have a beautiful day. Dynamic blessings. This is our moment of meditation together. I was just saying, I love meditation. And I love it probably more now than any time in my life. I mean, when I first began meditating over 40 years ago, it carried such wonder and such awe. I just loved it. And now I really love it. It's like to penetrate the sense of separation from my real self and to have a conscious connection with who I am is becoming more profound. Not with necessarily all the lights and big blasts that I had in the earlier days, but just a pure, I'll use the word deep, even though there's no depth nor height in an infinite presence. Just a deeper connection with me. And this me that's a perfect emanation of the God presence. I love it. I want you to fall in love with not just being a good meditator, but I want you to fall in love with who you really are. And as you have insight into who you really are, that undifferentiated wholeness called your soul, who you are, life takes on a whole different feeling tone. And the world, as ridiculous as it looks, and the world does look ridiculous, you have grown men and women in war, hating and killing their brothers because they can't see that everyone is your brother or sister, regardless of religious background, ethnicity, culture, where individual is born. We're all emanations of the same source. And when the consciousness is so limited, people actually think another person in another family or born in another region is not their brother. It's mass hypnotism. We're here to wake up to our glorious nature. Meditation is one of the primary fundamental keys. Let's practice for a few moments together. Close your outer eye, tap on the space between the eyebrow, and just say out loud, if you will, I am willing to see the invisible. I'm willing to see what can't be seen with the sensorium, with the eyes. I'm willing to also hear that which cannot be heard by the ears. As you bring your hands together in your lap facing upward, you now establish an intention to see with pure consciousness, pure awareness. You are pure awareness. You have a body, you have a mind, and as I've taught In Take Back Your Mind, the mind has been programmed. It's a set of programs. Some of those programs are healthy, constructive. Some of those programs are unhealthy, unconstructive, destructive. But your mind and your bodies are in your awareness. You are pure awareness. So we sit with an intention to wake up to the truth that we are awareness. And thoughts and emotions and perceptions, positionalities, points of view, bodies, subtle, physical, are in our awareness. We are witnessing that which is passing through our awareness. Our awareness, and we as awareness, is eternal. That which is passing through is temporary. We just watch it all pass through. Thoughts, opinions, points of view, emotional content. If any of the temporary snags your awareness, a noise, we don't label it noise, it's just a sound, an emotion, a thought, an opinion, an inner conversation. We just witness and let it pass through. We are pure awareness. We are awareness. Stillness, silence, sacred solitude. We must practice pure stillness, silence, and then sacred solitude. Our fortress of inner solitude emerges, and we feel one with the one, never alone. It is from this awareness that I evoke the presence of love and beauty and intelligence and harmony to be active in and as us. Not merely potential, but active now. This word is serving as a law of elimination to anything that would hinder, delay, or obstruct this truth from being active within us, that we may go forth in the world but be of the higher frequency of our oneness with the one. And it's all happening now. And so it is. And so we let it be. Open your eyes and feel me say to you, now, so be it. So be that frequency as you move back into the world. Peace and blessings. I appreciate your letters and emails that you've been sending in, but also the notes you're sending on the Instagram and on the website, thanking me for Take Back Your Mind. And I thank you for your support. As I've said before, if you want to support Take Back Your Mind, support the sponsors. The main sponsor is the Agape International Spiritual Center, agapelive.com. We have a Facebook presentation, an Instagram presentation, a YouTube presentation, and a website presentation. You can donate to the sponsor at agapelive.com. It's one way that you can donate. It supports the podcast. Second sponsor is Nutrarise.com. You go to Nutrarise.com, those 3 lines up at the top, you touch that line, and you'll get Adaptogen. Adaptogen are my products. The Super Green Superfood Greens and the vitamin D3, K2. Both extremely good for your health, your nutrition. You support the sponsors, you're supporting the podcast. Have a beautiful, and as I like to say, a bright day, luminous day, because you are a luminous being. Peace and blessings. Your time is very valuable, so I want to thank you for lending us your ear and participating in taking back your mind. If you want to submit a question for the question of the week, please submit it to podcast@michaelbeckwith.com. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, please submit a review and let us know your thoughts. Stay on top of current episodes by subscribing to the podcast so that you'll receive alerts and not miss one single episode. And feel free to share this podcast with all of your friends and family. And until we meet again, take back your mind, and you will take back your life. Peace and blessings.